Hola chicos, soy señorita Saber y hoy vamos a hablar de la gramática de capítulo 1b, de los verbos saber y conocer. And if you were in Spanish 1 honors last year, you might remember at the very end of the year we talked about these really quickly, but the rest of you haven't seen them before. So if you need more information, it's on page 56 of your textbooks, and we'll go ahead and get started. So our big question for today is, how do we talk about what we know in Spanish? Please go ahead and write this down at the top of your papers. Make sure you leave a little bit of room where you can answer it. And as we go through this video, I want you to focus on answering that question. Alrighty. So you already know the present tense forms of saber and conocer. You've learned both. They both follow the pattern of a regular ER verb, but each has an irregular yo form. So they follow regular ER verbs, but irregular yo forms. So for saber, our irregular yo form is sé. Yo sé. Billy la bufanda es una bufanda. Right? That's what that comes from. Yo sé is I know. You can also say I know by saying yo conozco. So that one's a little bit longer. And then all the rest are just going to be normal. So we'll go ahead and put our normal stem in here. And then as we go through, we can review what a regular ER verb looks like. Conos. Alrighty. So for saber, we have tú sabes, él sabe, nosotros sabemos, vosotros sabéis, and ellos saben. For conocer, and please go ahead and write these down in your notes as well. You'll want both these conjugations. We have tú conoces, él conoce, nosotros conocemos, vosotros conocéis, and ustedes or ellos conocen. After you have these down, feel free to move on with us to the next slide. All right. So now that you know the conjugations of the verb saber, let's talk about when to use them. So saber and conocer, like we talked about before, both mean to know. Now in English, we only have one way to say to know, right? I know this, I know that. But in Spanish, we have two separate ways that are going to split this idea. Let's do a quick example. So let's say I told you, I know every player on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What might that mean? It could mean I know all of them personally. They are my friends. It could also mean I know who they are, their names and their jersey numbers. In English, that idea of I know really means two different things, but we use the same word. In Spanish, we have two different verbs for that. So we said that saber and conocer both mean to know, but we're going to talk about how they differ. Saber is to know facts and information. This is where it would fit if I said I know every player on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I meant I know their names. I know who they are. I don't actually know them. Conocer, on the other hand, is to know a person or a place. If I said yo conozco a los jugadores, I know the players. With conocer, that means I know them personally. They're my friends. Conocer also means to be familiar with something. It's that same kind of more personal idea. Saber is to know how to do something. So if you want to say, I know how to play chess, yo sé jugar ajedrez. So the overall understanding here is that while saber is more factual, conocer is more personal. Let's flip onto the next page and we'll do some examples. But first I want you to make sure that you have all this information down in your notes, please. All right, let's talk through this one together. So if you asked a friend, blank si tenemos tarea para mañana, do you know, right, because we're going to use the verb to know, do you know if we have homework for tomorrow? And the question that I want you to ask yourself is this, is this a fact or information, or is it more personal? And if we have homework tomorrow, is more fact or information? So we're going to use the verb saber, and we'll conjugate in the to form. ¿Sabes si tenemos tarea para mañana? How about on this second one? Blank al profesor de esta clase. Do you know the professor of this class? Is this more fact or information, or is it to know a person? This is more knowing a person. If you said, do you know who the professor is, that's a fact. But here they're asking, do you know the professor? So we're going to use conoces al profesor de esta clase. And then they answer, no lo conozco. No, I don't know him personally. One thing that I want to point out while we're on this example is this al right here. Remember, this is from a plus l. And whenever we use conocer with a person, only with a person, okay, go ahead and write this down in your notes. Conocer with a person, use the personal a. And we learned a little bit about the personal a last year. The personal a is that a that comes right after when you're talking that you're doing something to or for a person. And we always use it with the verb conocer. So whenever you use conocer with a person, make sure you include that. But also, whenever you see that a, it's a good hint for you that probably you're going to use conocer. Okay, let's do number 3. Número 3. Blank, ¿quién es el director de la banda? Do you know who is the director of the band? Now this who, ¿quién, is your big hint here. Do you know who is the director of the band? And that's what makes it a fact or information. You're giving them a name. You're not saying you know this person. So we'll say, do you know? ¿Sabes quién es el director de la banda? How about number 4? Yo blank jugar ajedrez. I know how to play chess. Now, whenever you're talking about something that you know how to do, you're going to use the verb saber. So we'll use the yo form as irregular, remember, so we'll say yo sé jugar ajedrez. It's a little bit weird because in English we have to add that how. I know how to play chess. In Spanish, you don't have to add that. You don't need anything in between. You can just say yo sé jugar ajedrez. And then one more. Blank el Club Atlético de la Calle 8. Do you know the athletic club on 8th Street? Or are you familiar with the athletic club on 8th Street? The athletic club on 8th Street is a specific place. And when we're talking about a place, we're going to use conocer with people or places or things that you're familiar with. So we'll say, ¿Conoces el Club Atlético de la Calle 8? Notice that we do not need the personal a here because it's not a person that we're talking about. We only use that when we're talking about a person. So our goal today through this lesson was to talk about this question. How do we talk about what we know in Spanish? And our goal at the end of the lesson is that you should be able to answer this. So if you still don't feel quite comfortable with it, feel free to re-watch one of these slides or to check out on Moodle. There are some other options of different teachers explaining. Also, if you have any questions, please go ahead and write those down now so that you can remember to ask them in class. But we learned a couple of ways to talk about what we know in Spanish. First, we learned that we use saber and conocer, which is different from English where we just have one. I'd love it if you guys would conjugate those verbs for yourself on your sheet of notes. Remember the irregulars, sé and conozco. And then the other thing that I would do is just write down the rules, whichever one's better for you. I would write that conocer is more familiar and that saber is more factual. You might also want to write down that saber is facts and information, or how to do something. Whereas conocer is a person or a place, and it means to be familiar with. I would also write down a star and an A next to conocer to help you remember the personal A. Chicos, gracias por escuchar hoy y nos vemos en la clase. Adiós.